the bones, and in the back leads you to catatonic chemistry.
Hello readers, I'm Amy and I'm here today with my SALEM TBR. I am so excited. My best girlfriends in the world and I are all going to Salem, Massachusetts in the middle of October. I'm a little nervous because I know that Salem gets super crowded in October. I'm gonna try and make like reservations for breakfast and dinner and stuff. But I'm super excited, I'm in a witchy mood. I have so many other books that need to be on my more immediate TBR, but I'm basically throwing them out the window in favor of some witchy reads. So, first off, I have Black Candle Women. This was published earlier this year. It was advertised as something similar to Practical Magic, and I would agree, but it's better. Let me kind of explain that a little more. And I'll get on to actually those books in a minute. But Practical Magic, the book, was fine. Like, I don't know if it was that it was a little literary or that the magic was like a really subtle kind of enmeshed in the world rather than being more obvious magic. I don't know. Something didn't quite hit the mark for me. The movie is phenomenal. I don't know that anything will top the movie, but the book was fine. This book is a lot better than the Practical Magic book. This is following a family of 4 women with a history in voodoo magic and a history in New Orleans. Right now they're not living in New Orleans, but at some point they have to think about going back because the granddaughter, not the great-granddaughter, getting that mixed up with another book I'm reading. The granddaughter is starting to fall in love with a boy. And her mom is not communicating about it at all. Her aunt is trying to help her, but still not really communicating about it, and the grandmother is also not communicating about it. There's a lot of, I'm trying to raise you without actually giving you the information you need, which is really relatable as a woman because there are so many things about our lives that we are not told until they happen. So I actually really like that about this book. It's got this really like heartfelt family life to it while also being frustrated because family is both loving and frustrating and it's a whole thing, and I love that this book really encompasses all of that. But yeah, the youngest is in love with a boy and she can't be because the men who are loved in the family end up dying. So we get to see what becomes of that. I just wish it didn't have the permanent printed on bookmark sticker, which is awful. But beautiful cover, really loving this book. I started it yesterday and I'm a little over a third of the way through. As for Practical Magic, like I said, first book was fine. Second book was also fine. I believe it took place in the 70s and it was about the original characters' grandmothers that they lived with, which you'll know if you watch the movie. The third book is where I think this series really hit its stride. So it's Practical Magic, The Rules of Magic, sorry, I'm trying to read it and it's sideways, and Magic Lessons. Magic Lessons was my favorite of the 3. The first 2 were good enough that I carried on with the series anyways, and also I think I love the movie so much that it got me to carry on with the series. But I have the last book, it's The Book of Magic. Normally I wouldn't take this long to read a series, but having grown up on the movie, I feel like it's a lot easier for me to follow along with this series, even with having big breaks in between each book. But I will be doing a buddy read with 1, maybe 2 of my best friends who are going on the trip with me just before we go to Salem, so I'm excited to see how the series ends. This one, so I said book 2 follows the original characters' grandparents. Book 3 follows the original witch who laid the curse on the family about men that they love dying. Book 4 is following the original characters' daughters. So it's interesting that this series, each book has a huge jump in where it's focusing. It's not like in order in a timeline, but I'm kind of okay with that. So then we have Evil Eye by Etaf Rum. This was published just a couple days ago, Earlier this year, I read A Woman Is No Man and absolutely loved it. It's like a generational family tale. I don't know if Evil Eye is necessarily witch-related, but it's this woman, I'm assuming she's Palestinian American because the author is Palestinian American, and that seems to be what she focuses on in her writing. But it sounds like the main character is pretty successful in life, but she doesn't really feel it. She doesn't really appreciate it. She has these flashes of anger and sadness that come out of nowhere, and it's assumed that maybe someone has used the evil eye against her. So it's about women, it's about family, it's about an evil eye, and I'm super excited to read this. I've been waiting for this book for months, so I'm popping it onto my Witchy Women TBR. Really want to play that song now. Her Majesty's Royal Coven. This is the Barnes & Noble sticker. I just haven't peeled it off yet, so that'll be gone soon. Her Majesty's Royal Coven is one that I've been eyeballing for a while, and I haven't wanted to pick it up because the series isn't finished yet. I don't know how many books it's going to be, but the second one either just came out or it's coming out soon. But this was buy one, get one 50% off as a paperback, so I went ahead and grabbed it. I don't know that I'll read this before Salem. I might want to wait until the second book comes out in paperback, because I tend to like to read a series all in one go if I can. But we'll see. My need for a good witchy read might just take over, and I might read this. Who knows? Who's to say? I don't really know too much about what it's about. In reading the plot, it's also a little confusing to me, but Victoria, from what Victoria read, absolutely loved this. So between her recommendation and me loving witchy books, I picked it up. Also, the Barnes & Noble sale. Then we have The Manningtree Witches. I know this is a newer book. I don't know if it's this year. No, it's 2021. So, I mean, newish. But really love the cover. I've seen this here and there, but I haven't actually heard anything about it besides seeing it crop up in pictures on Instagram. I think the cover is really cool. I like the different elements and the colors and the shapes to it. This is more historical fiction, witchy stuff. So this does take place in 1643, puritanical fervor, that whole thing. I have a couple of books like that. I think the more modern witch stories tend generally to be my more preferred over the historical fiction, but that said, Magic Lessons, the third one by Alice Hoffman, is also one of my favorite witchy books, and that is definitely historical fiction, so who knows. But a lot of the historical fiction for witches can really be back and forth. Last year, I read Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch. I was seeing that everywhere. I was hearing great things about it, and like that one was fine. It was historical fiction. I don't know. It was fine. So hopefully I like this one more than that. And lastly, this is one I've been seeing all over the place, and again, just haven't had time to pick it up yet because I have this whole cart full of books that I need to read at this point in the year. Besides my witchy TBR, I'm trying to focus on some of the newer books so I can maybe talk about the Goodreads list at the end of the year and have a better idea of what to vote for on that. A lot of people are like, if you haven't read at least a couple of the books, you shouldn't vote. But it's like, well, if you've read one of the books and you enjoyed it, then just vote for that book. But of course, if you haven't read one of the books, then don't vote for it. Anyways, that's a whole thing. If I do a video on Goodreads, I will get into that later. But the last book that I've heard so much about, haven't gotten to yet, I was really confused on the title, is Venco. And when I initially saw it, I'm like, oh, it's Venco Coven, that's really repetitive. Why would they title it that? And then I look at the notes on like Goodreads and in the New York Times bestseller list and stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's just Venco. Venco is the only title. They just repeated it so that you know that it's about a coven. This is a company. So this is Venco, a front company fueled by dark money. Witches hide in plain sight where women gather, Tupperware parties, mommy and me classes, and suburban book clubs. So the term dark money makes me a little bit nervous. I recently tried to read and DNF'd Naomi Alderman's new book, The Future, which I got from the Simon Book Buddy program. It was about like corporate people, and it was just really slow, and I didn't care about any of the characters, and dark money makes me think higher ups in corporate structure and economics, and that just does not interest me in a story. But then it mentions the Tupperware parties, the Mommy and Me classes, and suburban book clubs. And that is interesting. That gives me Stepford Wives vibes. That gives me Southern Book Club, Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires vibes. Like, I love a good dark story about Tupperware parties and cults, and so I have pretty high hopes for this one. That is my stack of all of the witchy reads, at least that I could immediately see on my shelf. I tried to turn my cart around. I think this is all of the witchy books that I have. I want to get through at least a few of them before Salem and before I really try to hit my absolutely need to read pile. I'm getting super rambly. I need to end this video, so please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media. I will catch all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.